This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I am your host. I am your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, and we're heard Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network across Europe on Euro Radio TV, the X Zone Broadcast Network, and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. To check out the great programming we have for you, 7/24/365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, just go to www.xzbn.net. My guest this hour is a gentleman I've had the pleasure of knowing and having on the show a number of times. His name is Mark Anthony. He's also known as the Psychic Lawyer, as well as the Psychic Explorer. He is a science-based evidential medium. He is the author of the award-winning, critically acclaimed bestsellers, Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. His work bridges the gap between the spiritual and the scientific. An Oxford-educated attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the U.S. Supreme Court. He practiced criminal law and was featured regularly on television as a legal analyst. He uses evidence now to validate proof of the afterlife. Anthony is a world-renowned fourth-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. His family's psychic legacy has been documented to the early 1900s on both sides of the family. His psychic great-grandmother was recently featured in The Italian Americans on PBS. His father, likewise, was a psychic. He was instrumental to the Apollo program. I remember that, guys, going back a little bit in time, the U.S. manned missions to the moon. Now, Mark is featured regularly on TV, radio, and print media as a psychic medium and paranormal expert. He is also a headline speaker at conventions, expos, and spiritual organizations such as Edgar Cayce ARE, IANDS, which is the International Association of Near-Death Studies, the Sedona Spirit Symposium, and universities including Brown, Columbia, Harvard, and Yale. Now, the website is you've got your pencils ready because you're going to need it, www.evidenceofeternity.com. And joining me now from Florida is Mark Anthony. And Mark, always great having you on the show.
Thanks, Rob. Great being here.
You are one of the most busiest psychic mediums, as well as one of the top credible in the world today.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Rob, it's like you with this show. this is your mission.
Yep.
And your job is to get out there and to educate people and to open their minds and to enlighten them. And my job is to get out there and to let people and share with people my experiences and what I know. And it's just been an incredible journey. I mean, this year so far I've been on The Doctors, which is a national TV show. Mm-hmm. And they had me do a reading for a family in a cold case, also to discuss my work as a psychic medium and how science and faith are on the same page. And it's really cool because about a month after that was about almost 2 months ago, and then a few weeks ago, apparently that episode aired in Australia because I started getting a bunch of emails from folks in Australia. So it's nice to see that our work gets around the world. But, it's very important, Rob, I think, for us to explain to people that spirit communication is a fact of life and it is not evil or negative, and people need to get out of these primitive fear-based belief systems that make everything they can't understand demonic or negative in some way.
Isn't that the truth, my friend? Mark, you and I have to take our first commercial break. Please stand by. Exonation Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, is our special guest this hour. He's the author of Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. His website, www.evidenceofeternity.com. And later on in this hour, we're going to tell you where Mark is going to be in the great United States of America this coming summer, and hopefully you'll get the opportunity of seeing this great psychic medium in work, in action, I should say. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. By the way, a special reach out to Jim Mars, a great author and a great friend. Jim, our thoughts and our prayers and our love are with you, my friend, and we wish you a speedy recovery.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Hello, I'm Pete Marsh. With my daughter Justina, we will be presenting the new radio show, Too Good to Be True. If something seems too good to be true, it usually is. But with the help of Justina's amazing gifts, we're going to gain insight into questions that don't yet have complete answers. Have you wondered who built Stonehenge and for what reason? Why are crop circles found in the same region as Stonehenge and elsewhere? Are crop circles a hoax, or are they created with technologies that we have little knowledge of? Who built the pyramids in Egypt and also in other countries? How and why were they built? Was the Titanic switched with the Britannic as part of a gigantic insurance fraud, or for more insidious reasons? What caused the Tunguska event when trees were flattened over an 800 square mile area in Siberia? Will the new insights be too good to be true? Well, that will depend on what you are prepared to believe. Please join us as we start on this journey together. For more information on Too Good to Be True, visit www.xzbn.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
www.Evidence of Eternity is the website for our guest this hour, Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. And as I said, Mark, you are so busy. You and I were just chatting before we went on air, and you were telling us you're going to be in Colorado and Texas, Arizona. And man, is there a new resurgence in spirituality? Are more and more people starting to get the message that, yes, you can communicate with the other side?
I think so, Rob. In fact, I'm sure of it. And what's happened is, for centuries, people looked at mediumistic contact, which I refer to as interdimensional communication. And they looked at this as something negative and evil, and a lot of religions are, don't talk to mediums and all that sort of thing. Well, what's happening is the paranoia and the fear that's rooted in the Bronze Age is starting to erode, and a lot of people are now wanting the personal experience. And I know it sounds like I'm crashing on religions, and I don't mean it to be that way. But belief in God and belief in religions is about peace and love and understanding, and it is not a negative and a fear-based thing.
Right.
And so that's the difference. Also, what a lot of the great spiritual teachers, Rob, have been saying since the dawn of recorded history is that God is light and God is love. And now what we're seeing in the realm of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and Einstein first postulated this theory a century ago that light is both particles in waves, and that on a subatomic level, everything at its most basic unit is electromagnetic energy, referred to as quanta. Long story short, what we're seeing is that everything is based on light, and that Einstein, when he said we are all light beings and that there's no matter, there's just energy that vibrates at different frequencies so that we can perceive it. Now, isn't this what Krishna and Buddha and Jesus and Moses and the great spiritual leaders were talking about with light? I mean, the Buddhists and the Hindus always talk about enlightenment and seeing the light. Moses communicating with God in the form of a burning bush, which is, light. Jesus talking about the way to the light. So what we're starting to see now is that what these incredibly intelligent and articulate, wise sages and teachers throughout the centuries were talking about is now what quantum physics is beginning to prove. So I think it's very exciting, and a lot of people now are getting away from the fear and the paranoia of religions and realizing that spirit communication is essentially tuning into a higher frequency.
Now, when somebody comes to you for a spiritual communication with someone on the other side, is it you who communicates with spirit, or does spirit communicate with you?
They talk to me, and I tell the people what I'm experiencing and seeing. And that's a good question, Rob. There's essentially 3 different types of mediums. There are what's known as trance mediums, and people who are familiar with the Abraham Hicks work, but more notably, I think, is Edgar Cayce. And Edgar Cayce would go, he was referred to as the sleeping prophet. He would go into a trance-like state, and spirits would actually speak through him. And he came up with some amazing cures for all types of illnesses and maladies, and a lot of the things that came through Cayce coincide with the quantum mechanics view of the nature of the universe. Then there are what are known as physical mediums who supposedly, and I've yet to see one that I'm actually persuaded by. Unfortunately, the history of mediumship is fraught with fraud, and I observed a very fraudulent demonstration of someone who's holds themselves out to be a physical medium. But if they're a real physical medium is supposed to be able to project ectoplasm from their body, and the ectoplasm will then take on the form of the person, of the spirit communicating. And we've all heard of ectoplasm from Ghostbusters and all that, but even the United States Air Force described the milky white substance of an F-18 breaking the sound barrier as appearing to be ectoplasm. So it's interesting when you see an organization like the United States Air Force acknowledge the existence of ectoplasm. The third type of medium is like myself, a mental medium. And what that means is we are able to bring our brainwave frequency to a higher level and to then a spirit, to tune into the frequency of a spirit. So it's a lot like tuning into a radio station. So basically, I see things, hear things, feel things that are being projected to me, and then I describe it for the person that I'm doing the reading for.
When you're doing your readings, Mark, have you noticed a change in the questions that people are asking of you to ask the other sides? And if so, have you found a correlation between the sociological implications of what's happening in the day or the week of the questioning?
It depends on the person, and it also depends on their circumstances, because people who are in an intense state of grief, one of their main concerns is, are they suffering? Are they alone?
Right.
Are they happy?
Yeah.
And and I get those questions a lot. And spirits are never alone. The other side is a collective consciousness, which means that once you separate from the body, you're pure energy, and energy is interconnected with everything everywhere. And energy doesn't get old, doesn't get sick, it doesn't die. So they're always happy. We're the ones in the material world, you and I and anyone else who's lost a loved one, we're the ones that are in pain and in suffering. So I get a lot of those questions, but then I'll get people who do ask about, well, does God exist? What's the afterlife like? And it surprises me when spirits start transmitting this, they start talking about time and light and the ability to be multidimensional and be everywhere at once. And Rob, one of the coolest things, and I love when this happens, is a spirit will occasionally transmit to me what it feels like to be them, to be pure energy.
Oh, wow.
And I can only handle it for about 5 seconds. It is the most incredible feeling. It's like all of a sudden I don't have a body. The best I can analogize it is if you're ever like swimming in a pool or in the ocean and you go underwater and the water's that perfectly warm temperature.
Oh, yeah.
And you feel weightless, like you have no body and everything just feels great. It feels like that, but so much better. And then you get this sensation that you're somehow part of, or at least can have access to everything everywhere. Yeah. And then I'm drained. And thankfully, when they do that to me, it's usually at the end of a session, because I think spirits are pretty well aware that they hit the medium with that right up front, we're going to be so wiped out we can't do the rest of the session. And the way I like to explain that, it's like being a single wire suddenly confronted with all the electricity going through Manhattan. It's just too much energy. And that makes sense when you start to see the difference between a person living in the material world who's vibrating at a slower rate because we have this density that we call matter, versus a spirit which is pure energy and therefore vibrating at this higher frequency.
Unreal. Mark, for our listeners who may not have had the pleasure of listening to you before, because, the show's grown since you were last on, how did you become the psychic lawyer?
Psychic abilities, mediumship, and premonitions, intuitive senses run on both sides of my family for generations. We've tracked them back into the 1890s, and I would assume it's before that too. So around age 4, I started seeing spirits and communicating with these, with spirits, and my parents were aware of what I was doing because they could see them too.
Right.
And people say, "Oh, you're a gypsy fortune teller." No, I'm not a gypsy fortune teller. My dad was a NASA engineer, and my mother was an illustrator. And she worked in stores and she was a wonderful painter. We were a middle America family. Okay, and I was the first one in the family to come out public in a very big way. So I was always drawn to the spiritual. And Rob, I actually wanted to be a priest, a Catholic priest, because I was raised in the Catholic religion. But I started to see I didn't agree with a lot of what they were, believe what we tell you, the teachings of the church and all that.
The dogma.
It was so dogmatic. I love that expression, my karma ran over your dogma, and it just, so much of it just seems so mythologically based and entrenched in ridiculous rules. But I loved the saints, and I loved the teachings of Jesus and the spirituality and the light. And when you feel good about it, as opposed to you're bad because of this, original sin because of that, negative, fear. And so I decided there were too many rules and regulations in being a priest, so I ended up going to law school. As if there were no rules and regulations there.
Well, I was just going to ask you, what was like they both are heavily entrenched with rules, regulations, and a lot of reading, a lot of studying, and
I always found I found the law to be very interesting and in some ways very intellectually rewarding. I mean, everybody says when they go to law school or med school, I want to do it to help people. It's like, well, yeah, that's a component of it, but I also felt that it was intellectually challenging, and also with my verbal and written and intellectual skill set, it appeared that would be the area that I could do the most good, and so. After doing that, I started finding that my intuitive and mediumistic abilities, they're part of me. They're part of my DNA, and it would be very helpful in court and in other situations when I was using those. So it became very interesting.
Something that is very apparent, Mark, is that you love people. You love helping people.
I do. And when you see somebody who's lost a loved one and the light has gone out of their eyes and they're crushed by that horror of grief, and if I can, because of this ability that I've been blessed with, and it's truly a blessing. It's also a huge responsibility. If I can see some of that grief and anguish come out of some people's eyes, and they feel better, and it's very humbling. It's very rewarding. Some people, though, are very hostile. Even if you do a session with them, afterwards they're very angry. And I think that what happens, Rob, is they begin to give back to the fear. And then they start to doubt. And then they think, well, this is obviously a trick. You looked me up on the internet. And it's funny because I was doing a reading. A lot of the readings I do are in front of crowds of people, and that's assuming that, number one, I knew everybody who was coming, and number two, that I not only Googled everything about them, but I remembered it.
Wow, you're good.
Yeah, I'm a bright guy. Yeah. I'm not that bright, but I was doing a reading at this one event, and there was this real kind of country guy there, and he and his family stand up, and his father came through, and I could see he was really nervous about this. And he said, well, how do I know you didn't look me up on the internet? I said, your dad's talking about a lemon meringue pie that just came to me. The guy goes, oh, my God, I made one of those last night for dessert. I said, well, was that on the internet? He goes, no. And I could see a complete change in him. The fear melted. And he said, this really is my dad, because a number of other things came in.
All right, Mark, stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. X-Zone Nation. Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, is our special guest. His website, www.evidenceofeternity.com. We'll be back on the other side of this news break. Don't go away.
Dreams are our personal gateways into infinite wisdom. Don't miss shamanic counselor and indigenously trained dream decoder Sandra Corcoran's inspiring book, Shamanic Awakening Between the Dark and the Daylight. This remarkable work chronicles Sandra's 35 years of experience with diverse wisdom keepers and her initiations throughout the Americas and across the British Isles, Turkey, Greece, and Egypt. Sandy's knowledge of symbology, psychology, and myth influenced her dream blog and workshops. Sandy offers private tarot readings, international journeys, a meditative CD, as well as her book, Shamanic Awakening, to encourage you as you navigate this earth walk, creating a deeper connection to yourself and all that is. Find this and more at Sandy's website, starwalkervisions.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
X Zone Nation, Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, is our special guest this hour. Mark is a good friend of the X Zone. His website is www.evidenceofeternity.com, and Mark is the author of Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. All right, so here you are, and you were able to get the information from this family's father who was on the other side, and you got the impression of, lemon meringue pie. And does that happen to you often, where something just a bolt from, the other side just kind of zaps you?
It does. Well, the other day I was doing a reading for this woman, and it was a very good reading. And then when it was over, I said Coca-Cola in Atlanta. Okay. And I said, look, I know that Coca-Cola's headquarters is in Atlanta, but your father keeps showing me this. I said, is there any connection with you in Atlanta? And then she says, no, I've changed planes there. It's like, well, who hasn't?
Yeah,
you know what
exactly.
I mean? And she said, but I'm not getting anything. I go, what about Coca-Cola? She goes, I can take it or leave it. It's, so it wasn't really resonating. I go, but boy, this is really strong. Well, yesterday I got an email from her, and she said, the day after the reading, her daughter called her and said, hey, Mom, I'm in Atlanta at this conference, and you won't believe it. I'm staying right down the street from the Coca-Cola Museum. So what happened was her father's spirit was transmitting this information, and now we look at it, and he was letting my client know that he knew her daughter, his granddaughter, was going to be in Atlanta and was going to be right near the Coca-Cola Museum.
Wow.
And so a lot of times when things come through, they don't immediately resonate. And I call the period after the reading the unfolding, because it can take hours, days, weeks, even longer sometimes for the full impact of the reading to come forward. And some people that don't understand this, despite explaining it, they get hostile and say, oh, it's all phony and blah blah blah, and you're just making this up. Well, it's like, why would I just fling Atlanta and Coca-Cola at somebody? If you say, oh, you had a puppy, well, everyone's had a puppy, okay? But when you get these very unique and specific things, so things like that do happen quite a bit.
Has there ever been a time when the other side just didn't want to talk to the person who was sitting in front of you?
The other side always wants to communicate with us. It's the person here who can be blocking. And I found a couple different incidents with this. People, number one, who are in such a profound state of grief. I want him to come through. Why doesn't he come through? Why? And what it is, they don't mean to, but that intense desire and that intense depression and all those negative emotions, which are very normal and very human,
sure,
unintentionally create a barrier. Okay, it's like I always joke on Star Trek raising the deflector shields. Well, that's what you're doing. Or people that sit there and just say no to everything. No, 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 no. I was doing a reading for a gentleman, and his daughter came through, and she kept talking about his heart. And I says, there are problems with your heart. No, 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 no. She won't let me go with the heart. No, no. And then he goes, well, I have an artificial heart valve, but no, there's nothing wrong with my heart. And it's like, well, wait a second.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody cut your chest open to split your ribs apart, remove part of your heart and replace it with a plastic valve, and you don't see that as an issue or a problem? Oh, I guess when you look at it that way. And so there are people who create this no, 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 because they're going directly to no instead of keeping an open mind. So people can, without meaning to, create these negative energy barriers, which then make it difficult. Or the people that just flood their head with negativity. I don't believe this. You can't do this. Or they're so afraid. It's like, well, the Bible says this and that. And I mean, somebody said to me recently, well, the Bible says stay away from mediums. I said, well, the Bible also says that if you work on the Sabbath, you shall be put to death. And they're like, really? I go, yeah, check. I think it's in Leviticus. It's, I've got the site somewhere.
Yeah, sure.
And it's got a lot of these things. It's like, so really, if you work on Sunday, then you come home, I'm supposed to shoot you in the head. Is that what you're saying? And of course not. And so you've got to be careful about taking some of these things that were written thousands of years ago,
too literal.
Perhaps in a context where it made sense, and trying to apply it into the nuclear age.
Yeah, that's something I could never understand, is how people, take the Bible that was written so many years ago when the knowledge was maybe 1/100th of the knowledge that we have today. And, it's got to be real. It's got to be true. It's got to be verbatim. And I often say, well, what would happen if nothing in the Bible ever happened until today? How would these stories be reported or written about?
Well, yeah. I mean, for example, in a pre-refrigeration society, all right, if you look at both Judaism and Islam, you're not supposed to eat pork. Okay, you don't mix dairy and other foods on a plate, especially when you eat kosher. Okay, in a pre-refrigeration society, eating kosher will keep you alive because you don't eat shellfish because you get food poisoning. You don't eat pork because of trichinosis. You got to bleed chickens and beef in a certain way because the blood in a desert environment will go bad and it'll kill you.
It was common sense.
It made a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you tell people to do this because it's good for your health, I mean, come on, it's like telling people stop smoking. Yeah, that really works. But when God said to do this, and if you don't, you can face hellfire and brimstone, then all of a sudden it becomes a whole different bag of tricks. And so I'm not faulting these things in the Old Testament, but they or in the Quran, but they have to be taken into the context of the time they were written. When you get to the more philosophical peace and love and understanding and don't judge one another, all right, that's where we're getting into the light. That's where we're getting into the love that is God. And what happens is the human ego takes over. And ego creates that us versus they. We believe this, therefore we are right. They don't, therefore they are wrong. And the ultimate act of ego is creating God in your own image so that he gets to hate the same people you do.
That brings up a question, Mark. Do members of the Islamic community come and have you communicate with the other side as well?
Yes, I've had a number of Muslims come to me, and throughout my life I've had a number of Muslim friends. I had this one, he was great. He's done this Oriental rug business, and I remember one time I had to go over and deliver some papers to him. And it was hilarious, Rob. And this would be a good Christmas story. But I walk in, and it was early part of December, and he was like, "We must have Christmas tree, good for business." And he was arguing with this African-American employee, and then the employee says, "Well," he goes, "I'm an atheist. I'm not into Christmas." And I could hear, Omar going, "Yes, but you wanted Kwanzaa off last year. That sounds like Christmas to me." And so he says, "Go get Christmas tree." And so he sends him out. And then he looks at me, and he goes, "The lawyer who sees dead people. Come. And Ramadan had just ended, so he goes, "We will have baklava and coffee." And when dealing with people from Iran or from the Middle East, you just don't go in and drop off papers, okay? No. It's a social thing. Yep. And also, he was inviting, and Ramadan had just ended, and you're not supposed to eat during Ramadan when the sun is up, and now it was over, and he had baklava and coffee. And let me tell you, I wasn't about to turn down the baklava this guy had. And so we're sitting there eating baklava and drinking coffee, and he goes, "Oh, so you brought papers like a good Christian, as if there is such a thing, And so we're laughing about this, and in about an hour or so later, his employee returns and with this Christmas tree, and Omar's like, "What a beautiful Christmas tree! Where did you get it?" He goes, "I got it from Goldberg's Christmas trees. They had it on a discount." I go, "Wait a second." I said, "A Muslim sent an atheist to Jews to buy a Christian Christmas tree?" I go, there's got to be a joke in here somewhere. And then Omar goes, quick, call the newspaper. What better gift for Christmas than a carpet from the land of the three wise men? He goes, the Magi were from Iran. I mean,
God.
It was just great. And you know what, Rob? When we all put anger and differences aside, people are people.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that I think that there are too many people out there who are trying to put the divide between the people, and they forget the fact that we're all here on this little planet together. And if we were to respect, understand each other, it would be a better world.
I really think it would be. And when you look at what the great spiritual teachers were saying, that is what they were saying. But what happens is ego-driven personalities, be it politicians or religious figures, they get hold of a religion and use it as a moral justification for their own political ends. And, you see that going on right now with the radical Islamic terrorism because, there's 1 billion Muslims plus or so in the world. Well, 99.999% of them want the same things you and I want. You want a job, you want security, a roof over your head, someone who loves you, a safe neighborhood, a peaceful place to live. Okay, that's what people want. Okay, you want your children to feel loved and go to good schools and have opportunities. The vast majority of people, but that 0.001%, boy, they sure do make it difficult on the rest of us.
Exonation Mark Anthony is our special guest. He's known as the Psychic Lawyer. His website is www.evidenceofeternity.com. You've also done a lot of television. You're a paranormal expert. But before we get into another topic, can you share with us some of the most heart-touching communications that you've had acting as the gatekeeper to the other side?
Oh, my gosh. The reason I say, oh my gosh, is there are so many, but the one that immediately comes to mind, I actually wrote about in my first book, Never Letting Go. And I did a reading for this woman whose name is Vicky Rios Martinez, and she gave me permission to use her story and her name. And her 11-year-old son had been kidnapped, raped, and then murdered by a serial killer. And I didn't realize during the course of the reading that the serial killer had also been executed. And even though it all happened in Florida, I was out of Florida like a month or so when he was finally executed, like 15 years or so after the little boy was killed. And the boy came through, and he with his grandmother, who was my client's mother, and it was just beautiful, beautiful messages. And then the energy changed, and this other entity came in, and then I said, oh my God, it's him. And it was so profound because my client, I said, look, I'll ask him to go away. She goes, no, I want to hear what he has to say. And he came through and explained that when he was in our world, he said I was insane. And he showed me his consciousness, and it was like trying to watch a television filled with static. And he was explaining how he was motivated by these really sickening desires that I don't really want to talk about. It's hard for me to talk about this as it is.
All right, so why don't we do this, Mark? Instead of me interrupting you in a few moments, let's take a commercial break now. And when we come back, we'll hear this story. Exonation Mark Anthony, the Psychic Lawyer, is our guest. His website, once again, is evidenceofeternity.com. Mark is the author of Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. And his work, my X-Zone friends, bridges the gap between the spiritual and the scientific. We'll both be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Are you curious? Do you want to learn more about how the world works and have fun at the same time? Study coincidences with me, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on my Connecting with Coincidence radio show, here on the XZBN network. Listen to Jungians theorize, statisticians randomize, true believers evangelize, while I categorize. I dance to the rhythm of coincidences. People who experience me see more of them. Maybe something on the show matches a thought in your mind. Let us know. Expand your mind to the weirdness happening around you. Synchronicity spoken here, there, and everywhere. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence in your search engine and find my website, my social media sites, and my blog.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A Soul Balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world. There's a legend shared by many indigenous cultures of a time when the nations were cast to the 4 corners of the world. Each nation was given a body of sacred knowledge that held a different portion of the truth to preserve. True reality could not be known until all the nations reunited, combining the information. If a single one was missing, the world could not be reborn and darkness would prevail. The Science of Magic Radio is dedicated to reuniting the sacred knowledge. With the understanding, none of us has all the answers, but together we can open new perceptions and possibilities. Through our combined vision, the world can be reborn into a place where darkness no longer prevails. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic daily on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, or visit us at thescienceofmagic.net.
Exonation Mark Anthony of the Psychic Lawyer is my special guest this hour, a good friend of the X-Zone. His website is www.evidenceofeternity.com. And Mark was one of the guests 2 years ago on the X-Zone TV show. And if you'd like to see my on-air interview with Mark on the X-Zone TV show, just go to www.xzonetv.com. Mark, before we went away, you were just starting to tell us about this very strange and bizarre entity that or this how would you explain it? This power, this force, this.
Well, it was doing a reading for a woman whose 11-year-old boy had been raped and murdered by a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
And her son and the boy's grandmother, which is her mother, had come through. Very, very positive energies, beautiful messages, and then this different vibration. I could tell he was on a different level, a different frequency, lower, denser. And he came through, and it was the killer who had been executed. And he said he felt like an empty, like when he was in this world, he was like an empty garbage can, like filthy, dirty, an empty vessel. And he also explained how he was insane and motivated by very negative desires. And I was having a real hard time wanting to communicate. And the mother, Vicky, she said, I want to hear what he has to say. And he said, I'm sorry for what I did to your son. And then I heard 3 more boys. And then all of a sudden her son's spirit came in and said, he is not evil here. And
wow.
And I said, the killer wants your forgiveness. And she said, tell him I do forgive him. And I was like, what? And then not that, because I try to always maintain objectivity. And she said, when we went for the execution, because in Florida the family has the right to go see the person put to death, she said, and it was by lethal injection, he was already sedated. She said, I wanted him to see the forgiveness in my eyes, because she said, and it's not because I need to, it's not about him. It's about I can't move on with my life unless I let go of this hatred.
What a lady.
I know. And then, the spirits evaporated or pixelated. And she said, that thing you said about 3 more boys, she said, nobody knows this. I know this because the police detective told me, but he was suspected in other murders. That's why they believe him to be a serial killer. And she said, this never came out in the news, but there were hair and tissue samples at the scene of my son's murder that did not match my son or the killer.
Lord.
So it's pretty clear that he had murdered other boys because, children disappear all the time.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't believe you forgave him. And she says, it has taken everything in my being to do this. And unless I do this, I will never ever be able to move forward. And as I wrote in Never Letting Go, and the reading was in a beautiful place. We were standing near the ocean. It was a January day, bright Florida January day. The air was cool but not cold. The sun was just radiating off the water. And I said that I've always wanted to meet a saint, and that sparkling day before the shining sea, I think I did. Because anyone who could forgive a person for doing what that monster did to her son has to have the heart and the soul of a saint.
Wow. God bless her.
It was such an honor, just such an honor to just to be in her presence. So, I've conducted a lot of readings that have been extremely touching and very, very heartfelt. But that one always comes to mind. And it's not to say that because I see this a lot with grieving people, especially parents who've lost children. I don't mean any disrespect in any shape, form, or fashion, but there's this, my grief is worse than your grief, and if you haven't lost a child, you can't possibly understand what I'm going through. No, I can't. Okay? No, I can't. But my job as a medium, as a person who helps people cope with grief, is to convey this information and to provide a compassionate and sympathetic atmosphere. But please, I don't mistake that for me saying, "Oh, I know what you're going through," because I don't. And it's one of the things on my website, evidenceofeternity.com. In the grief management section, there's several pages. It's a free resource open to everybody. And there's one page, the 10 things to say and the 10 things not to say to someone in grief. Don't tell someone, "Oh, I know what you're going through," because you don't. Maybe you can sympathize. Maybe you lost a child, okay, or another loved one, but you don't know what another person is going through. So just tell them, I'm sorry for what you're going through. I'm here if you want to talk.
Yeah.
Words alone cannot express, what you're going through. Those are the healthier, better things to say than, oh, well, you can always have another child, or you're young, you can get married again, or
God.
he's in a better place. Don't tell someone that your loved one's in a better place.
Yeah.
Okay, because
you're just adding.
That comes that while it's well intentioned, it can be taken very, very, very badly.
Hey, Mark, as I was telling the listening audience before in our first segment, you and I were talking about the places that you're going to be throughout the summer. So why don't you share it with us? So hopefully we can get some of our listeners to have the opportunity and the pleasure of seeing you do your wonderful work in person.
Oh, super. I'll be in Colorado doing an evening of spirit communication in Denver on July 29th at the Arvada Center for Arts and Humanities. And a few days later, August 3rd through 6th, I'll be one of the keynote speakers and presenters at IANS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies. Then in August, on the 17th and 18th, I'll be in Houston, Texas, on Great Day Houston, the morning show with host Deborah Duncan. She's fantastic. And that evening and the following night, I will be at Body, Mind, and Soul in Houston for an evening of spirit communication. Arizona, I'm very excited to return to the Unity of Tucson Church on Tuesday, September 12th for an evening of spirit communication where, like at Body, Mind, and Soul and at the Arvada Center, I'll be connecting audience members with loved ones in spirit. And then Friday, September 15th through Sunday, September 17th in Scottsdale, I'll be one of the key presenters at the Afterlife Research and Education Symposium, where I'll be doing mediumistic work, but I'll also be presenting my theories on how quantum physics supports the existence of an afterlife. So it's a very busy summer, and if folks want to find out about how to get tickets to these events and more information, please just go to my website, evidenceofeternity.com.
In the past, you and I have talked about the haunted White House, and I have to ask you this. With Donald Trump there, what happens to the hauntings? Do they kind of say, this is it, I'm going? Or do they stay there and try to help him out?
A lot of people, and in fact, Lyndon Johnson, according to legend, was overheard when he was by himself speaking to or asking advice from Abraham Lincoln, who supposedly wanders the halls of the White House. Why don't we instead focus on perhaps the wisdom of Lincoln to guide Mr. Trump in his presidency? Because, it's a difficult. I can't even imagine what that job must be like. And certainly Mr. Trump is a colorful character and one of the most colorful figures we've had in the White House in a long time. And a lot of people hate him and want him to fail. But I kind of look at it this way. Wanting your president to fail is like wanting the pilot of the plane that you're in to crash.
Exactly.
And I don't want that.
No, neither do I. And I've said this many times on the show, that one of the things, and I'm saying one of the things that I love about Donald Trump, is that he was able to show all of America that you don't have to be a Washington insider or have a political connection to become president of the United States, that anyone can become the president of the United States. And I think that this is where a lot of the problem from those who are doing their damnedest to upset the apple cart of the White House is stemming from, because he can't be bought.
Exactly. I just wish that he would just stop tweeting. And I always like to avoid politics, and I try to maintain objectivity. Yeah, he's having a lot of hostile coverage, but unfortunately he's bringing a lot of that down upon himself. And Albert Einstein, who's my hero, said that the weak want revenge, the strong forgive, the intelligent ignore. And then, of course, there's Abraham Lincoln, whose spirit wanders the White House, who said, "Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt." So I'll leave my political commentary with that.
You know, my friend, the time has come when you and I must say so long. But as always, Mark, it's such a great pleasure and honor speaking to you. I love the work that you do, the hearts that you touch, and the tears that you dry, my friend. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And let our listeners know where they can buy your books.
At all fine bookstores all around the world. I know you're in Canada, and supposedly Evidence of Eternity will be coming out in French. There's I believe, a company, a publisher in Montreal that will be doing it. But Barnes & Noble, private bookstores, Amazon.com. And once again, if you go to my website, evidenceofeternity.com, it'll show you, links to buy my book through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart.com, Llewellyn.com, the publisher. So it is available worldwide in several different languages.
Mark, take care of yourself. Thank you for joining us tonight, and safe travels to you throughout the summer, and hopefully we'll connect in the fall and you can tell us all about your great summer.
Thank you, Rob. God bless you. And to all the listeners, keep tuning in to the X Zone. This is the place.
Take care, my good friend. X Zone Nation, the one and only Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, www.evidenceofeternity.com.